So I want to offer some constructive criticism, I suppose. Recently, and I want you to understand something going into it, I am pro-gay marriage, I'm pro-gay rights, and I would hope if you are going to sit with me and watch this video, you will have the intellectual honesty to understand that my criticizing of this one piece of writing is not in any way, shape, or form meant to be seen as some kind of dog whistle opposition to gay rights on the whole. I think it is entirely inappropriate and intellectually dishonest to try to deflate nuanced arguments by making broad generalizations. So please keep that in mind, because I'm actually going to, in the course of this discussion, present points on how what I'm about to criticize could actually be made to strengthen, or could actually strengthen and make its argument better. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about this book called A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, which was put out by John Oliver, or more specifically, John Oliver's program Last Week Tonight. It was a group effort on part of that show. And recently, John Oliver had done a video or an episode on Mike Pence. And he slams Mike Pence for a whole bunch of issues, his views on homosexuality outstanding among them. And I agree, Mike Pence's views on homosexuality are reprehensible. They're behind the times. He is a withered relic of a forgotten age. And I do not like the man. I think he is absolutely disgusting. And the only opposition that I have to the impeachment of Donald Trump is that it might, that would probably mean that we have to suffer President Mike Pence. That said, I do still think that Donald Trump should be impeached. Side issue. Anyway, so we have this book, Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, and the idea was that in this episode of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, he concluded this segment on Mike Pence by saying he promised at the beginning of the episode that he would say something nice about Mike Pence by the end of the episode, and so he concluded by saying, I really like his bunny. And Mike Pence has this bunny. I was not aware of this until I saw this episode of Last Week Tonight. Mike Pence has this bunny named Marlon Bundo. And so Marlon Bundo has, of course, like a Twitter and an Instagram and all this, and he's become kind of an internet sensation. And there's a book coming out, a picture book called A Day in the Life of the Vice President, which is supposed to be hosted, so to speak, by Marlon Bundo, his bunny. And so John Oliver and company seized on the Oliver and Company. That was a movie, wasn't it? Anyway, John Oliver and company seized on the idea of this book of this Marlon Bundo character and put forth their own picture book called A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo. And A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, their book, instead has the titular rabbit finding love with another male bunny and wanting to have a gay marriage but not being able to because the ruler of the animal kingdom, in this case a stink bug that is obviously designed as an analog for Mike Pence and designed to look like Mike Pence to a certain extent, says no, only boy bunnies can only marry girl bunnies, blah, 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 and all of this. And so that's their setup. And of course, what happens in the book is all of the woodland creatures get together and have an election, and they vote the stink bug out of power. So Mike Pence is no longer in power, and gays can get married, and Marlon Bundo and his boyfriend Wesley get married happily ever after. So that's the premise. And I want to say, on the whole, there's really not anything wrong with this book. It is a genuinely, in and of itself, it's genuinely sweet, and I think it's very sweet. And there are things in there that I really liked. And I say this, the reason I'm doing this now and not a few weeks ago when it came out was I just recently happened upon the book in the store and stopped and read it, and And so it's on my mind now. There are things in there, things in there that adults will appreciate. Like there is a Wolf who's a news commentator, and of course his name is Wolf Blitzer and things like that. There's some really cute, really sweet drawings and illustrations in there. Seeing, for example, there's one image of Marlon Bundo carrying Wesley, his husband, carrying him over the threshold of their home and everything. It is very sweet. It is really adorable. And so I cannot fault it there. But I wanted to make a couple of points about this. The first one is I have a real problem with books that try to I want to say indoctrinate because that word gets used too much, but I guess that's the right word. Indoctrinate kids into a particular political viewpoint. I don't like it really bothers me, left wing, right wing, what have you. It really bothers me when parents, or not just parents, but when, I guess, children's book authors and everything try to use the naivete of children and the innocence of children to kind of not present their position as this is what I think is morally right, but just kind of make it the psychological foundation of a child's thought process. That rather than teach the kids to think for themselves, that really bothers me. I'll give you an example of a right-wing book that does this. There's one called Help Mom, There's Liberals Under My Bed. That's a little bit more overt. I don't like that either. I don't like anything where we're taking advantage of, you really are taking advantage of children when you do that, because you're not creating a perspective where, it's like, well, this is how some people think, and we have to kind of find a greater good and learn how to live together and find something better so that we can all coexist. The higher truth, the higher good. It's not teaching that. It's teaching we're the good guys and those are the bad guys. And I do not think that's healthy with kids. And I don't have kids of my own, but if I ever have kids, I don't ever want to get called to the principal's office one day because my son or my daughter has beaten up a kid at school that they just automatically assumed was the enemy. So that bothers me. I don't like that. And building on that, I think that, good children's books are things that, they're the books that instill larger values of character rather than trying to sway kids. Oh, and another great example, obviously, by the way, is creationists. The young earth creationists have been putting out, God knows, no pun intended, God knows how much propaganda disguised as children's entertainment to sell the idea of creationism and intelligent design and all of that. So that's another example of where this kind of thing bothers me. Again, it's not the issues themselves per se. I'm on the side of gay marriage, but I don't like the idea of in any way, shape, or form propagandizing to children, stunting their minds to think instead of thinking, here's how I should present myself to the world, instead thinking we're the good guys and those are the bad guys over there. Great examples of books that just instill good character development and good moral values would be like the Berenstain Bear books, for example. And by the way, it's Berenstain. It's only ever been Berenstain. It's never been Berenstein. And no, we've never been in an alternate dimension. Go watch your DVD of Shazam if you need to take your mind off of it. Anyway, but the whole point being, those are, now some of the more recent Berenstain Bear books where they've gone off, they've kind of gone off into Christian ideology. It seems those books, the books of that series that I've read, the Living Lights series, they don't seem divisive. They don't seem like political tools. But when we talk about, in general, though, those books, the Berenstain Bear books, are a good example of character building, that kind of thing. The other thing that children's literature needs to do is it needs to encourage the imagination, and that more than anything. It needs to encourage kids to be creative and to have imaginations. Oh my God, that is so important. And so Good examples of that would be things like the Chris Van Allsburg books. If you're familiar with those, if you haven't seen you've probably seen the movie Jumanji. It's based on a book by Chris Van Allsburg. Absolutely stunning, absolutely brilliant. The Polar Express is another one, and his work is absolutely stunning. And Dr. Seuss is another great example. Dr. Seuss, who's kind of Salvador Dali for kids. That is the essence, and I think, of really encouraging imagination in kids. And those are the two most important things that children's literature needs to do. And, becoming an activist voice for a political cause you believe in is something that I think should come later. And you can raise your kids to be on the side of your beliefs or to appreciate your beliefs without kneecapping their thought process at an early age. Again, that's my rant about these types of books in general, not just this Marlon Bundo book. So, that said, building from that premise, the other problem, then there's 3 problems total that I have with this book, but the second problem is the way they deal with the stink bug in the book is to they have the election, and then the stink bug tries to tell them what to do, and all of the forest creatures turn around and shout, "You are not in charge!" And the stink bug is blown away by the collective, the collective force of the wind of their words, and he's blown away. And that's it. That's where that ends. And we end on this place of animosity for the stink bug. He's still the enemy. He's still the bad guy. And this is where not only do I think it's a bad message to send to kids, I think that it fails to live up to its fullest potential. I mentioned Dr. Seuss. Think about how the Grinch stole Christmas. It's a story we all know fairly well, so I won't summarize it. But what happens at the very end? The Who's down in Whoville, they all, invite the Grinch to come to Christmas dinner. And the Grinch realizes that it's good what they're doing and that it's warm and loving. And he comes around to their side of the argument, or their side of the problem or the issue at hand. He realizes the good in what they're doing, and he sees it from a position of inclusivity and kindness. And imagine in A Day in the Life of Marlon Bundo, imagine if the stink bug in this narrative came around to the side of the side of Marlon Bundo and became pro-gay marriage within the context of the story. And now, the stink bug becomes everybody's friend, and, maybe he stops being the stink bug and he becomes some other kind of bug because he doesn't stink anymore. So, you could build it up that way. And I think, in my mind, that would be a much, much sicker burn on Mike Pence to show this character, this avatar of him, coming around, because that's actually more subversive. That's more effective. You're coming around and saying, we could, this character we've set up of you, we believe that you can come around to this good. We believe that you can do the right thing. And, will Mike Pence be swayed by that? Probably not, but it's a much more positive, more proactive message, I think, to show the stink bug somehow coming around and being in favor of the marriage and being forgiven for being the stink bug and pushing everybody around. I think that's a really important message, and this book fails to do that. It just says we leave on a place of animosity with the stink bug, and that's very important, because we have got to think. I believe. We've got to, if we want to avoid the kind of division that gives us presidents like Donald Trump, we need to think about what we may be doing to alienate people. And that's the thing. We live in such a horrifically divided world that the true message that needs to get across is one of inclusivity and forgiveness. And that's hard. That's tough. And I'm not saying I'm not negating the feelings of people. I'm not trying to negate, I should say, the feelings of people who feel slighted by Mike Pence. I feel slighted by Mike Pence, and I'm not even gay. And so I totally understand and sympathize, but we have got to be better people. And it's on that note that I offer my final piece of criticism, which is not a reference to the book itself, but to something that John Oliver said on the show. The proceeds for the book are going to benefit 2 gay-related charities. And so in announcing that on the show, John Oliver said, you should buy the book because, and I quote, you'd be doing a nice thing in a really dickish way. And I don't think that's a good message. I don't think that's a positive message. It is, I don't like that idea because I think that I think that you really, really corrupt and spoil what you are trying to do and what you're trying to, whatever good you're trying to accomplish when you think, I'm doing this so I can be a dick. Because motivating people to do a nice thing for the sake of giving themselves that smug sense of moral superiority, of being, doing the right thing in a dickish way, I think is a very toxic, very negative attitude to take on. And we've got to be so mindful of that. Because this is one of those issues where what do you want to be? Truly in your heart, what do you want to be? Do you want to be the strong person who says, this is where I stand on the issue, and I will, to you who have wronged me, I will forgive you, and if you are willing to see the error of your ways, I forgive you, and we can move forward together? Or do you just want to put your thumb to your nose and go, nanny boo boo? So I think it becomes disingenuous at that point. And at that point, I feel like it's less about gay rights and more about, or less about gay rights and gay representation and more about just being a dick to someone you don't like. And again, I can totally understand wanting to be a dick to Mike Pence. From a moral standpoint, he more than has it coming. But that doesn't mean we should give it to him. As the saying goes, there's a difference between, or as the saying goes, having the right to do something does not mean it's the right thing to do. So that is what I feel like. The reason I wanted to make those points is because this book was really irritating me, but I didn't want to sound like a curmudgeon. I didn't want to come off like, screw this, whatever, and just be all down in the mouth about it. I want to try to offer a nuanced perspective, and I hope that in hearing that, you out there who are listening can appreciate, if you are on the left, if you are someone who's very much vocally or very much in support of pro-gay marriage or vocal in your beliefs about it, I hope you can appreciate where I'm actually coming from. My concern is that this kind of callous disregard and shallowness and propagandizing is going to hurt the deeper cause of gay rights and gay marriage and gay representation. Anyway, those are my thoughts, and I have some house cleaning to do because I have just criticized the world, and, Jordan Peterson would frown on that simply because my apartment is an unbelievable disaster. So I hope you'll think about what I've said, and I am going to go tidy up. Take care.